Sometimes it works. Well, thank you all for coming. Can I grab that for a second? Okay, yes. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm Alex Miller. I'm going to be the host tonight. We're going to have an exciting panel with leaders from throughout the space. I'm going to take this whole thing and I'll just get back in a second. Leaders from throughout the messaging space. So just starting with a little bit of housekeeping in the beginning. We have way too much pizza. So I really want you guys to help me with that and help me clear out some of the pizza so I don't have to take it all home. We also have a lot of beer and some soda. The beer and soda are the two things over there. And then if you came and you signed up over here, that would be really great. If you haven't signed up and put your name down yet, I appreciate if on your way out or in the end, you could just put your name down on the sign-up sheet over there. Now, this is our second meetup. Our first meetup was about half this size, so it's really exciting to see so many new faces here. But this is not going to be our last meetup. We have another meetup coming up already scheduled for February 18th. That's a Thursday, February 18th. That's the that's the Thursday of Developer Week. So that's an exciting time to have a meetup. We're going to have a lot more people, I assume. And so this meetup is the second Messaging 2.0 meetup. It's called Chat-Based Commerce. So we're really going to be discussing quite a lot about how people are going to be developing commerce, e-commerce over chat, over platforms like Slack, WeChat, WhatsApp, over text messaging, over email. I'm working with a company called TeamChat. Our founder, Brood, over here, will be moderating the panel. TeamChat builds tools that help people build unified messaging bots and unified messaging platforms. So that's APIs for everything from connecting to Slack and WeChat and SMS and Facebook Messenger, and also for building surveys and forms and kind of just about every kind of thing you would want to do with chat, including building workflows to connect your users. We also have a software development kit that can embed chat into your app, be it iOS, Android, or HTML5 web. So that's our little plug here in the beginning. Let's get it out of the way. And then I'd like to introduce Varud, who will be our moderator today. So I was originally planning to moderate, but Varud came back from India, and he's had a really great trip. So we're going to let him take over and invite our distinguished speakers to join us. Varud is the original founder of Elance, and now the founder of Webberoo and TeamChat. Webberoo is the largest SMS provider in India. They are just going gangbusters. They service some of the biggest clients in India, like LinkedIn, Facebook, all these companies that need to send messages in India. They do it through Webberoo, which also owns TeamChat and is building out some really cool tools. Varud, I'm going to pass it to you. Thank you very much. Sure. Okay, well, in that case, I'd like to bring up Richard Gong and Nico and Sergey Bukov, and is Shane is here? I haven't seen Shane yet. Ah, Shane.
I was just saying, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
Good to see you. So thank you guys, and let's get started.
Right. How we doing? You good?
All right, big crowd today, huh? Exciting. So I guess if you guys have been keeping track of the news and so on, right? 2016 is shaping up to be the year of messaging, right? Messaging platforms, messaging bots. It's the year when messaging gets way beyond just basic communication or collaboration. I think it does far more interesting things. Maybe coordination among people, business processes, workflows, commerce, and many other things that we'll talk about. There were a flurry of announcements literally over the last few weeks. Facebook announced an Uber integration right inside the messaging app, right? So you can book a taxi from Facebook Messenger. Slack, I know Amir is here from Developer Relations. They launched an app directory less than a month ago, I think. Very exciting. WhatsApp announced, right? They're going to stop the subscription fee and enable businesses to communicate with consumers. We'll see what form it takes, but that's very interesting as well. I think Twitter has been working on some things along these lines as well. WeChat has been doing it for years already in China. So and then our app, TeamChat, has also been getting some traction. So there's a lot of things emerging, and just all happened literally over the last month. So in a way, it feels like a once-in-a-decade paradigm shift, right? If you look at the history of tech industry, in the mid-'80s, you had desktop and apps. In the mid-'90s, browser and websites. In the mid-zeros, the mobile OS and apps. And now it looks like it's going to be messaging platform and bots. And this is going to transform consumer experiences, enterprise experiences, just our entire mobile and computing experience even more broadly. So, there were millions of websites and millions of apps, and I suspect you'll see millions of bots coming up over the next few years. So if I were to sort of paraphrase some of this, right, messaging is the new platform, bots are the new app, right, and the message is becoming the new UI. So, so clearly many companies emerging as bot development companies. I think some of them are represented right here as well. So that's why we decided to host these meetups as a way to figure out the trends, what's going on, where are the opportunities and threats, what are the do's and don'ts for startups and developers and other stakeholders as well. So, we have, in this meetup, we'll specifically dive into how commerce and messaging collide, how they intersect, how does that evolve and so on. So I have a few questions to get started, but please think of your questions as well. Before we dive into that, I think let's just meet the panel. I think I'd love to, if you can each introduce yourselves and what you do with your elevator pitch. I think that'd be really helpful.
Sure. My name is Shane Mack. We have a company called Assist, and what we do is we bring all local services to every messaging platform and allow you to book, reserve, buy, do anything within a messaging object.
I'm Sergey Burkov, and the company is called Alterra, with double R, Alterra.cc, and it's a robotic travel agent, Siri the travel agent, virtual assistant for travel powered by algorithms, no people do.
Hi, my name is Nick. We run Relayer, which is a company that deals with conversational interfaces and last mile logistics. Our most known product is Gone. It's an app and a messaging service that helps you with selling all the stuff you no longer need, that has some unique features on the last mile logistics and fulfillment real world part. So this is the kind of stuff that we do to answer a good example, because it involves a lot of the physical world and last mile problems out there. So this is pretty much it.
I'm Richard. I'm founder of BayLaunch. We built and launched more than 30 different startup ideas in the last year, and 2 of them, Insta Einstein, which was a Get Magic Now clone, and MealPal, which was a foodie concierge app for finding restaurants, were 2 of the projects that used SMS as the primary UI, and we saw a lot of differences between like the sort of the UI-based projects and sort of like traditional user interface projects, and it was really exciting to see how the UI-based ones actually got a lot more traction. It was a lot easier, more intuitive for users to use. So excited to be here today to talk about that stuff.
Cool, welcome. So let's just lead off with a very general question, right? I mean, if I were to paraphrase it as messaging 2.0, I mean, how do you guys see messaging 2.0? You know, how does it? Why is it happening? What exactly is happening? What's the most interesting thing, according to you? Do you want to start, Shane?
What was messaging 1.0?
Basic human-to-human messaging. I mean, WhatsApp, SMS,
Yeah.
things like that. But here, you know, you're seeing sort of more advanced services emerging. You're no longer just talking to your friends. You're talking to businesses. You're getting things done.
Yeah, it feels like we're kind of behind China in general.
Right.
And I don't actually think we ever figured out mobile. So when we say that like the last 7 years were the years of apps, I think that's kind of a facade in our world. Apps have never been easy to build. They've always been very expensive. They weren't like building a website. The whole world could build websites. The quantity of websites compared to the quantity of apps is not even comparable. And so I feel like when the mobile world came along, apps became a thing. Apps are really hard. Apps are really expensive.
Right.
No local business, no regular business could ever have an app. All of us here with money and venture and the world could have apps. And so the space is emerging in my mind that what's the best way to transact on mobile that everyone in the world can use? And that's through chat. And it's coming out of a place where I think web never really got there. It's still hard. Now I have to have a mobile site, but it's still kind of clunky. And it all comes down to friction and what's the easiest way to transact do on a mobile phone, and that's by chatting. And when most of the world can't build apps, that's why it's bypassing. It's because apps aren't accessible. Like apps are so cumbersome to keep up, to maintain everything, that it's kind of coming out of necessity that I don't ever think we've figured out how to design for mobile. I don't think we've ever even got there, not even close. That's how I kind of see the world emerging.
Yeah, continuing on the app problem, another problem with app that nobody wants to install them. It's too cumbersome, it takes too much time. That with the web in the good old times of web browsers and websites, you just click from Google, you visit the site, you done your business, you left. With the app, you have to install it, and that's users don't want to do it. And virtual assistants are much easier. It's just a contact in your messenger, so you don't have to install the app. You just talk to a robot or a real person. So that's one big advantage of this new platform. But yeah, essentially Messenger is the new browser, and the assistants, virtual or real, are like web pages. So in the past, every business would have a website. Then in the apps ecosystem that Apple wanted to build so much that every business would have their own app, and it basically didn't happen for a variety of reasons. And so now the new paradigm is that every business would have their own presence inside a messenger, Facebook Messenger, WeChat Messenger. And so those assistants, those concierges are equivalent of the website of the old. And a lot of commerce could be transacted this way.
Yeah, the way we see it is like we absolutely agree with the fact that apps were never there. We also believe that platforms for app distribution were never there. In that sense, it's really hard for consumers to find the right app for whatever. So what we are seeing now, at least in my opinion, is going back to a trend from decentralization of services to like finding a concierge that solves the stuff for me back again, even if it comes with a bias or a fee or certain preferences, because you know, like at the end of the day, it's not that I need 300 options for my burger tonight. It's like it's the same thing.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's like the difference is so marginal. So why don't you solve me the burger problem tonight? I will pay you the fee. I think a lot of consumers are feeling this way, and that in part empowers the space. Of course, it's not for everything. There are many considerations: how commoditized is the service, how frequent is the service, if it involves some physical layer, some distribution layer, some logistics layer. So it's not for everything and for everybody, but it's definitely going back to some sort of bias after a trend of a lot of decentralization.
I think as Shane pointed out, like what's going on is you're moving from high friction in terms of developing services for businesses to low friction when you go from, say, web and mobile apps to sort of messaging, right? Like it takes not that much resources for a business to set up, you know, a Facebook page that lets you now message your users. And similarly, as Sergey pointed out, it's also lowering the friction for users. As users get more lazy, they don't want to learn how to use your complicated app or your website. But everyone understands how to send a text. And so I think it's a really good trend that we're moving in a direction where a lot of the friction is going away on both sides. So a lot more services are going to get created because it's easier to start those services, and it's also easier to adopt those services. And so, and that's exciting because that just means a lot more will happen. And as people start to recognize this, I think people will recognize the importance of investing in the messaging layer. There will be a richer ecosystem to support the services that come about, because there's just be more things you can do through messaging. Instead of just sending a message, you could do more you know, complicated social interactions, sending like a poll or something through a message, or you know, sending interactive memes through a message.
Yeah, in fact, you know, so one common point is after, you know, once we moved from client-side desktop apps to browser and websites, it was almost a step back, right, going to client-side apps. But I suspect it was just a temporary solution because mobile networks were never as fast as wireline networks, right? So if you had broadband, you clearly have server-side development frameworks. When you don't, so you know, you kind of have to do client-side stuff because the experience is so much better. So arguably, apps were just an interim solution until mobile broadband picked up. And now that you have it, I mean, of course, you know, we all know the benefits of server-side development. It's easier, cheaper, more democratizes access to small businesses and so on. So it's sort of inevitable that this was to happen. And I think all the factors are there. The networks are better. The devices are better. Makes sense, right? Okay, so coming to commerce, how do you see? You know, so if messaging apps get prevalent, we're going to do more and more things with messaging, right? Beyond chatting with friends, you're going to chat with businesses. Clearly, e-commerce dominates. You know, it brings in all the money for the online ecosystem. How does that happen on the messaging framework?
Well, I mean, one thing we've seen that makes it super easy to do, you know, commerce through messaging is that for a couple of our projects, we literally, when it came time to, you know, ask the customer to pay, we just sent them a link, and then they clicked on the link on SMS and did the Stripe checkout, and it was done. It didn't take a lot of time to implement, and you know, it was very intuitive for the user to just input their credit card and complete the transaction. Whereas if we had sort of like the traditional e-commerce storefront, then you would have to, you know, navigate to like the product and then figure out how to add it to your shopping cart and then input all this complicated address and stuff and create an account, and then you check out, and it was so much easier just to send them a link. And we had you know, 0% drop off after we set the link because it was they wanted the thing and it wasn't confusing.
It will be very, very broad.
Yeah, I would agree that actually online retail is probably not the best for this conversational interfaces, conversational commerce, because a lot of shopping is visual and people cannot describe in words what they want. They just flip through photographs of skirts and dresses and purses and stuff, and so if they like how it looks, they click and buy. It's very difficult to express in words what kind of skirt you need. So it will work apparently. I mean, the conversational interfaces will work in retail too, but maybe it's not the most immediate vertical. This is one of the reasons why we mess with travel. Our Altera is kind of robotic travel agent because travel is more protracted, that it's not just you come, look through images, click and buy, you look around, then you see some options and you stop the session, you go and talk to your wife or your friends because you travel together, and then 5 days later you come again and you continue your research and figuring out, how do I fly, where do I stay? And for this, conversational interface is much better because it doesn't stop when the user leaves the website. That's persona in your messenger, and she could talk to you for a month while you're still figuring out where to go and where to stay. So that's, I think, travel is kind of more, it's a better vertical for this type of conversational commerce. Another thing in conversational commerce that I think is kind of overlooked now is that it's two-way communication. That websites is one way. It's basically a scanned catalog. The users come to your website and they go through the catalog, and if you're lucky, they buy. And if you as a retailer. And if not, it's shopping cart abandonment. That's everybody knows that it is the biggest problem, and that's like 95%. People come, browse, don't buy. The chatbot, the virtual assistant, can actively sell to the user. So in some sense, there should be no shopping cart abandonment. If the user has not completed the purchase at the first session, then the chatbot could follow up with him day later, week later, 5 days later, and said, okay, dude, by the way, it's 3 weeks to your trip. The airline tickets go up in price. Do you want to book the ticket? So this two-way communication between chatbot and the customer is actually a huge advantage of chatbots. That you could, in some sense, forget about shopping cart abandonment. If they left, you follow up with them, and the good salesman can close any sale if he is persistent enough.
But not too persistent.
Not too persistent. Yes, otherwise they will remove you from contact list.
Exactly.
Can I just ask a question? Is the crowd here mostly enterprise or mostly consumer? Like, who's working on enterprise Slack / apps and consumer? Who is human based? Who is bot based?
50-50.
All right, basically that did nothing. We're split even. We're fucked. Yeah. We don't have humans. We don't have an app. So in this scenario, I agree with everyone. We draw the line in the sand and we say there's products and there's services. For products, I agree. Discovery is really hard. Personalization is really hard. Humans behind it make sense. For services, especially local services, in this day and age, it seems really, really hard on a discovery problem. There's so many services every day, from the food to the travel to whatever. You can't even keep up. Like I have like 19 apps that can deliver me food tomorrow, and I just get overwhelmed and I can't take it. And so I think when we're focused primarily on local services, is for the reason of discovery plus price and time transparency. How much does it cost? Can it get to me now? Because around food delivery, around reservations, it's very binary. It's like, can you do it or not? How much does it cost or not? So we look at it as all these things shake out, and a lot of them will probably go away, there's going to be this discovery problem of what local services exist in Chicago. What can I do right now? Who has the best price, and how fast will it be? And so when we pull everything, we try to look at it through that lens and just give you the best 3. And so we think if search was 10 results of links that just gave you information, can you give people the best 3 results that you can actually take action on and conduct commerce through? And so the lens in which we looked at the world is services, and we looked at a lot of goods and everything, but I mean, when you start getting down that rabbit hole, like, unless you have a tailor that you pay $100 a month who is your personal assistant who knows how to shop for you, the goods game seems really, really tough. And so we look at it through frequency and revenue, and the most frequent things people do are local services, and the hardest thing to keep up on is what's available. And so we try to just aggregate all the APIs, show you the best 3, and show you the best price in the quickest time you can get it. So you don't care if it's Postmates or Uber Rush, or if it's Sprig or Munchery or DoorDash or Sprig or whatever. And I feel like services lend itself more to commodity price-based plays that are very, very timely, so we know when to text you, 10:30 a.m. You know you ordered, and they also don't have a lot of loyalty.
Right.
And so that's we draw a hard line in the sand. So we push products down the road. Like Amazon did this in like 2007. Like
Right,
they
yeah.
did a text-based buying.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. So we absolutely agree. One thing, there is how commoditized is the service continuum. That's very, very important. So let's say rides. Rides is a very commoditized service. Like you want to go from point A to B, and pretty much everybody offers the same service. Food is less commoditized, and legal counseling is much less commoditized. So that's one axis of the equation or the graph. The other one is frequency. As you mentioned, frequency is very, very important. In some cases, if you have extreme frequency, it probably makes a lot more sense from a UI perspective to have an actual app on your home screen that you want to tap every once in a while. But if it's something that you do once a month, like what you will go through a friction like that, it's like, solve this for me now, this time. So there is definitely a sweet spot in terms of frequency and commoditization of the service.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to pick on the question that Shane asked. Human or bots, and I think like people said 50-50, but when does it transition from one to the other? Clearly bots are more scalable, but humans have judgment, and the service that's provided, there's a lot of concierge-based services emerging, right? I mean, you guys provide that service as well, but there's many others, Fetch, Operator, Magic, and quite a few worldwide. So what will be the human component, what will be the bot component, where do you use, and how do you guys do that in your businesses?
I might have a different perspective on this. So my last company, we did all humans. It was called Zarly. It's a pretty epic failure. It's still going, but the first 3 years were like most hyped, raised fuckloads of money, fired everybody, restarted 3 years later, did local services. But we started as Ask for Anything. We were like messaging back in the day, and you could ask for anything, so how much you want to pay for it, we'd put a human behind, we'd go get it done. And I actually, the promise today that I hear all the time is like, we're gonna put AI on top of this and we'll get rid of the humans over time. My perspective is the hardest thing that I didn't expect was how hard changing internal culture was. Because people internally all loved a certain use case. And when it came time to focus and pick, when we said you can ask for anything, and 2 years in, we're like, fuck, we need to pick a vertical, a thing, like we gotta just make a bet. The amount of people, we were at like 45 people, $34 million raised, and like lots of stakes, growth. Like we had to it was like do or die time, and everything went to shit because everyone had a use case they loved, and a story they loved, and the baker they loved, and the magician they loved, and the other service provider they loved, and the guy that delivered fucking donuts every day. Like everyone had a use case, and it was 6 months of like angst, and everyone ended up leaving. Like I actually think the internal disaster of ask for anything, will AI it later, when you have to choose, I don't know. I think that's too far down the road. I think that bet today is a bad bet. And everyone says it, and they say it over, Facebook says it. Everyone's like, oh, we're gonna AI this, and then, but internally, that's not what happens. Like, infinite possibilities at the top of the funnel that we're gonna make AI to something is not like practical today. And I think going through that was a very big learning for me that I didn't expect to happen, and ended up like, a mass exodus, restarting, going from 85 full-time at the peak to 12 and then back to 25. And like the worst 4 years of like everything's great about the dollar.
So based on that lesson, what are you doing in Assist?
All bots, no humans, fuck people. No, like for real. Like we don't do everything. If you want a fucking chicken tomorrow for your birthday, we don't do it. If you want a clown tomorrow to sing, we don't do it. We do like 12 services across 25 API providers, and we add new APIs every week. But like, we're not that smart. We're kind of stupid. We're like DOS and Yahoo, who got a baby and had a 2016 birthday.
I think there's two sides of this, which is like people are frustrated that they just can't get an answer to their customized problem. Whether that be, I want to find a place for a date night tonight, and I just don't want to go through Yelp and make a decision on my own. They want something to think for them, but there's nothing that's like, how do you address that, right? Like, you could either have a human do it, someone who's intelligent to do it, but that costs too much for the service provider. Or you could have a bot do it, but that's usually not going to provide the most intelligent answer, which is what this person's looking for. And so I think concierge services today face a very difficult choice, which is economics on the one hand, and that being bots, and sort of actually making users very delighted, which is why they come to these concierge services in the first places. They want that sort of white glove, customized, taking care of you feeling when they go to a concierge service. And so I think it'll be a sort of a journey to find a compromise between something that's economical and something that actually addresses the need for people to feel like they're actually going to have their problem solved by something that's actually going to think for them.
So I just wanted to respond to this. So we started, so Brian's here from Jersey, so I met him a year and a half ago. My idea was, hey, let's do local concierge. I'll get locals to do it, I'll pay them, and it's all human-based. So we started this. After doing Zarly, I was like, I don't know what was wrong, but I was like, let's try it again, we'll do this human-based thing, because that was my assumption. We did this for about 4 months. We got a few thousand users. And everything we thought was, the users love it, it doesn't scale economically, but we'll figure it out on the back end, or we'll just pour venture capital on it and fuck it. I'm kidding. We looked at it really quickly and we were like, why is no one coming back? Everyone wants a personalized service. Yelp fucking sucks. I hate Yelp. People want a personalized service. 50% of the people said they didn't want to bother someone for free. And that's when I realized that it's not that everyone wants a human to help them. Like, maybe that's a bad assumption. And so we had that, and we did it. And we had that app till 2 weeks ago. For a year, we were like, we love local human chat. And 2 weeks ago, we were like, yeah, fuck it, we're kidding.
So the decision wasn't based on economics, it was based on the fact that people just didn't want.
No one came back. We had like response time under 1 minute. great recommendations, locals, backup plan with the whole team that was trained on cities, only San Francisco. Like, I don't think you could change the like XYZ of the test to be people should use it more, and no one uses it.
So what we do is a hybrid model. We have this approach which is humanly trained bots.
Is that true though? Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So machine learns. So it's essentially the first answer to a specific question by the user gets stored, and the second time the user needs that information, there is a past history of similar answers. So the thing with this approach is I absolutely agree that people don't want to bother somebody, and sometimes there is a perception that the service should be a lot more expensive because there is a human involved, and I don't want to pay human on my service. But there is a very good opportunity to build services that involves both. Computers aren't that smart to figure out solutions for the first time, but they get smarter once they have recorded 10 or 20 times in the same situation. So we figured out that approach works for us, and there's a big opportunity to build services like that.
I used to work at Google, so definitely know people algorithms on the algorithms rule. So we are trying to build completely automatic solution. However, if there are third-party services manned by people, we don't mind. Again, we are in travel vertical, and there are human travel agents still. For complex itineraries, for vacation-specific LA, if it is a long vacation, you go with your family to New Zealand for 2 weeks, people still engage human travel agents, and we would connect you to those guys, but they are not on our payroll. What we have is complete automation, and there are simple tasks like you go to Expedia or Booking.com to book a hotel, and this can be automated. If you need complex itinerary, hopping between South Island and North Island, and you want to hike Fox Glacier and have a boat trip in fjords, then probably you would engage a human, but it's not us. Not me.
I think you get the quote of the day. Fuck you, right?
Such an
So-
inspiring quote.
I know. No, just kidding. I think,
No, I wasn't.
but I want to. Okay. It's okay. So I think I just want to make a key distinction, right? So what I heard is okay, automation and bots clearly more scalable, and so on, but not so much full AI, because we're not all the way there, or sort of, So how do you parse that, and how do you make it? So in that sense, if you have a restricted vocabulary set, you have a restricted set of workflows or processes and so on. So it can do a few things and do it well and repeatedly and scalably, but it can't provide counseling, right? Or it can't give you therapy or something. So how do you think about that? And then what do you need the messaging platforms to enable those interactions? I mean, can you do it all with plain text? Do you need some more structured elements in the conversation? I mean, how do you guys see that evolving?
Well, in general, I think there's a lot of overhead when there's if it's plain text. For the food concierge service, a lot of it was just a lot of back and forth, and it's kind of hard to make that economical without actually introducing UI elements where you can here's a standard format for answering this question, and they can very quickly get an answer. So I think there's a trade-off there. I'm not sure about sort of the bot versus human question. Maybe someone else can answer that.
Well, the problem with bots is that the technology is not here, that artificial, and so now it involves a lot of hard coding and rules and regexps and stuff like that. So when people say that we collect a bunch of human interactions, we just, like Facebook says, that we have a bunch of human operators and we log all their interactions with users, and then we just feed it into deep learning network, and this neural network will learn. I don't believe in it. It's not that advanced. You still have to do a lot of coding to make it work. So in some sense, when we say bots versus humans, it's a kind of pointless question because there are no bots. There is no universal bot. Nobody has passed the Turing test. So in some sense, for many situations, it's humans. There is no other option. And but hopefully, all this machine learning, artificial intelligence, DNN, whatever, will advance, and eventually the bots will become smarter and smarter and could replace people.
Yeah, there is the domain question. How ample is the domain? I mean, like, a very constrained domain makes things a lot easier for automating stuff.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, one alternative for the future is that everybody builds a very specific bot. And something like that might work. I mean, like our kind of human kind of electronic bots are very specific. They do just one thing.
Right.
And they don't do it well enough. I mean, they sometimes have to be assisted by human that teaches them how to do it, at least for the very first time. So I think maybe it's not about building a super intelligence or something that passes the Turing test or something like that. It's about, like, we all build different services and that might work.
Right.
Yeah, so in some sense, it's a scripted sales pitch, scripted sales call, that you should think about those bots. Yes, definitely should be controlled vertical because we have context, you have a finite number of words. But essentially, if you think about the call center and there are people selling crap there, so they have a script. They know what to say, what to ask. They have to fill out the form, essentially. And you can automate it. For every vertical, you can automate it. That if you have a salesman who sells whatever, TV services, that they have a script, so you can make a program that goes by the sales script and does it.
Yeah, I think if I may put it differently, right? We talk about messaging bots, and the moment you say the word bot, it conjures up visions of AI and all these other things. And it's probably a bit of a disservice. The name itself is a bit of a misnomer, because what we're really trying to say is, look, when we think about websites and apps, right, we don't think of AI-oriented stuff. We just think of, you press this button, it goes to checkout. You press that button, it responds to something, right? I press this button, it takes me to the next level in the game. So this is just basic software code that's programmed by developers in a specific rule-based manner. And I think today when we talk about bots, the reason why it's a good metaphor is that it's communicating through the messaging interface, but the reason why it's a bad metaphor is it's not talking about AI, it's just talking about the same website or the same app now inside a chat interface. So it's not, right, it's not meant to be something any different from most websites or most apps that you use today. It's just going to have, if you press this button, it'll do that. If you press the other button, it'll do something else. But it just automates this workflow and gives it to you in a messaging interface.
No, actually, I would disagree with this. That this is kind of the bot, the version 1.0. The 2.0 should be active.
Of course.
And so websites is a catalog. It's a scanned catalog. The users get the catalog, they browse through it, they may go to index and search, but basically there is no salesman involved in catalog buying. And that's what we had for e-commerce for 20 years. Now the new era is approaching that when you have people, salespeople in call center who could actively push the crap out. And of course you want to replace those people with bots, with artificial intelligence. And that's different rules. It's not waiting for the users to ask you something, but actively prompting the user, asking questions, and trying to sell the stuff. So it's not just a website. It's more than that. But again, it's doable, one by one, gradually, for each vertical. People could build specialized bots that would sell very specific type of products or services.
Like I'm not smart enough to agree or disagree, but I have an opinion. Bots, to me, are like scripts today. Even if you built that bot, it's very much a script that you program. AI teaches itself. There's a very big difference. Like when you get into AI and things that learn, that's where the whole game changes.
We're not.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why we're not even close to that. Like we're in bots and scripts. Bots are, in my mind, like URLs. Bots are just the way that messaging has to talk to API services, whatever. It's just we do it through a back and forth, if this, then that, in this, and more complex if-then statements. But like, I don't feel like any of us yet are doing. I mean, people are doing some AI stuff, but in the messaging services, product buying like space, I haven't seen anything that I'm like, oh wow, they're really, really great at AI. When like I say, hey, what's up, Facebook? And they're like, how can I help you? I'm like, that's such a genius response. And then you say like, thank you. They're like, you're welcome. I'm like, fuck, that's like, I don't think any of us are like, we're getting there, but like we're not there.
No, and I think with AI, the other thing that's lost is it's hard enough in English. Imagine all the other languages and typos and grammatical errors and
Should just use emojis. Done.
and emojis and so on. So lots of challenges, yeah. But the TV ads have started, right? IBM Watson. So who knows? Yeah, we'll see.
They take 30% of all your revenue.
Okay, so how do you? So there's so many different messaging platforms, right? In the mobile app world, you had iOS and Android for all practical purposes, just two choices. Even in the browser world, right? There were the browser wars, but maybe just one or two platforms. Here, if you just start with like WeChat and Line and Kakao and Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, and then
Google is coming.
right? And on the enterprise, Google is coming, Hangouts maybe, Skype arguably. On the enterprise side, Slack, but also Skype for Business and IBM Same Time and Salesforce Chatter, and you have so many different channels. So if you're building these bots, and let's say e-commerce bots, I mean, how do you have a single channel strategy, a multi-channel strategy? Do you have the same sort of bot and workflows across channels? I mean, how do you think about these things?
Yeah, so ideally it should be separation of backend and frontend, that you have your engine that is capable of selling your stuff, and it's independent of the messenger. And then you have a layer that connectors basically to WeChat, WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, Yahoo, whomever. And the beauty of this is that it's natural language. It's just text. It's ASCII text. It's plain English. So, in fact, the connectors are trivial because it's not like complicated protocol. You just send a phrase in plain English, and so it doesn't matter if it goes to Facebook or Google or WeChat or WhatsApp. It's same English. So it's pretty doable. You develop one universal backend and then like 10 connectors to different.
So I would say. No, I would say, so we've built on 5 platforms.
Right.
We're going to go to 10. And I don't agree with that statement at all. I think, not in a bad way. The reality is, we just wrote an article called "The Mexican Standoff on the Messaging Browser Wars" because we were like trying to make a call. We quoted everyone in the space because we were really like, is there a standard that's going to emerge? Can someone lead the way? Can all developers get on board with it? Because even in the platforms we're on, just sending the natural language isn't how the platform is going to decide to render what consumers expect of the platform. Facebook Messenger has an image and a title and a price and a get button that the get button pulls up the payment page, right? That's like their chat SDK. Well, Telegram has custom keyboards that make it really easy to access and do
Ignore
things.
them.
I mean, you can ignore them, but like as the platforms evolve
That's true.
and they get better design and they decide how they're going to render their design within chat. Is it a URL parameter that says title, image, description, link, price, action, buy equals this? Platforms decide how to render it? Probably. Hopefully there's a standard amongst anything. Is it a URL? It could be that basic. But like Telegram's already different than Kik, Kik's already different than Facebook, Slack sends me a URL that unfurls, SMS sends me an image, we send a GIF over here on Slack, we don't. Like, we have so many exceptions on already just a basic version, and we're not doing justice to the consumers on each platform by designing it how they expect it. That I think it's going to get way more complicated. I feel like this is going to be 100 times worse than like the IE, Chrome, Safari wars if something doesn't change.
But wait a minute, if you do native across 20 channels, I mean, and I'm using the word native just, you know, as a shorthand, but
Yeah.
I mean, that becomes very expensive as well.
No, it's the worst. It's worse than that. That's what I'm saying. Like but if you don't do a buy button that Facebook supports with their credit card on file, and you link out to a web browser to do Stripe, like that's not what the consumer wants.
No, I agree, but I think what will happen is, you know, developers will also vote with their fingers, if you will, right? Because standards are convenient, and ultimately people will say, okay, these one or two are easy to develop on. Because you couldn't even get, you know, Windows Mobile couldn't get traction, right? Just as a third platform, if you will, because there's already so much to do.
Oh, for sure.
so
But I'm saying to think that we're just going to send just plain text to these platforms, and the consumer's going to be like, this is great, when Facebook and Google's own assistant and all the main platforms and Siri comes into chat, like their stuff's going to be simpler, more beautiful, and better, and they're going to have some kind of chat SDK that we all use.
Right.
And we're already using a lot of them. I don't feel like a consumer's going to want this just command line text-based thing.
I think the answer also would be partly answered by like how early stage of a company are you? Like how much development resources do you have at your disposal? Like for us, like we just didn't really have that much resources, so we had to pick the most universal channel where all the users are. So I think when you're making the initial decision for like an MVP, most likely it's going to be where the users are heading. So in the US, I would probably guess, you know, Facebook Messenger or SMS still is probably the primary sort of like, you know, messaging channel for most people. You know, in China would definitely be WeChat, and in India probably be WhatsApp. So it'll be, I think, a question of like what's gaining traction and widespread adoption, and hopefully there will be a standard, so that'll make it easier for developers. And I think there will probably be like 2 or 3 standards in the end, just like with any other thing like this.
Yeah, hopefully there will be a standard, and probably we should write a collective letter to Mark Andreessen and ask him to fund that standard. But in the absence of a standard, which actually quite possible if we remember the instant messengers, that Jabber never worked. That it standard didn't take hold. So there was fragmentations, they remain fragmented. So if here we are in this unfortunate situation that there is 10 or 20 different messengers, that of course every online travel agency or retail store or a service that pet grooming or whatever, they will not develop 15 different bots, 15 different messengers. That's too expensive. What I envision that there will be translation services like yours, that essentially, if I have a business of whatever, pet grooming, and I have this conversational interface, that I would do one engine that takes care of all this artificial intelligence and chat and blah, 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 and sends messages to servers like yours.
Right.
And it translates it to 15 different messengers and forwards it to 15 different messengers for me. And this way, I don't have to bother with custom keyboards in Telegram because you'll take care of it.
Right. In fact, cross-platform has always been a big deal, right? Java itself was born for cross-platform. Even in the app world, you had Xamarin, Accelerator, and a few sort of cross-platform development tools. I think you'll need some form of cross-platform, multi-channel development tools. And whether they're perfect or not in every platform and how native can they get, I mean, that's always a challenge, but the need for, in fact, the messaging space is even more fragmented than the earlier spaces, and I think there will be an even greater need for cross-platform stuff. So let me just pause here. Are there any questions from the audience that we could incorporate into the discussion here? Yeah.
So, unsurprisingly, given the audience, this conversation has been fairly technical based, but the key word in the title for me at this meetup was conversational. Does anybody have experience of what users actually expect? Because I feel like there's a separation of interface expectation between people who know how computers work and people who just want to buy stuff. And that somehow this is what's going on with the evolution of chat. That consumers think it's easier or find it simpler, even though the natural language experience is actually kind of crap.
We've definitely seen that. I mean, we've built mobile apps, we've built web apps, and we've built SMS-based concierge services. And by far, concierge services using SMS, it was the easiest to get user adoption for some, and we were very surprised because it seemed like everyone was going to apps because it was just richer functionality. But it seems like people are kind of fed up with the complexity of technology and they want something simpler, like, and you can't get much more fundamental than pure messaging. And so it's actually, I think messaging is where the users are already. It's the one thing that everyone does on their phones, and so it makes a lot of sense for people to develop towards something that people are already very familiar with.
So I have a follow-up question then. Is it important that you maintain the illusion that there's a human on the other end?
I mean, for me, we felt like it was very important because a lot of it was about when you download an app, it doesn't feel very personal, right? But when you message an entity and they're a contact on your phone via SMS, it feels like a friend. And so the users that we interacted with related to us as if we were their friends, as if we knew them. And I think that's partly the appeal, that we built a profile of them, and the next time they interacted with us, say for the foodie service, we knew that, oh, they had a kid that they just threw a birthday party for. We know that to tailor the next recommendation towards their circumstance. And I think that's a sort of user experience that you just don't get with an app that sort of remember what you did last time. There's actually a sense that there's a person on the other end, even if that person changes every day or whatnot.
Yeah, I also think that there should be some personality. It should be a person, but rather it should not pretend to be human because it's impossible.
Absolutely,
It should be a kind of smart bot that it must be a robot with a personality like Data or something like that. I think Google is making big mistakes that it doesn't give name to its services. It's just Google voice search. There is no Siri, no Cortana. That's a disadvantage. People want to chat with bots, and so there are some companies that did like Siri-like universal bots, and they found that sometimes people spend hours chatting with the bot. They understand that it's a bot, that is dumb, but still they chat, ask to tell me a joke, what's the meaning of life, and stuff like that. And sadly enough, many of these people are elderly, and probably they don't have anybody else to talk to.
So there's a lot of studies on that, though. There's a couple studies that say people on a majority would rather talk to a bot if they know it was accurate and better than
Right.
talking to a human. There's many studies on this.
Right.
But like the acting like a human thing always fails. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know why to try to be the fucking Turing test.
Yeah.
Like the best thing Slack does, they're like, we're kind of dumb. You're like, yeah, I don't try to fuck with you. You just do your shit really well, and it works. And if it doesn't, I don't expect it to work.
Yeah.
The problem is when you say you're a human, everyone just
Right.
messes with you until you fail, and they're like, this shit sucks.
Yeah.
No, I think you can't really overpromise and underdeliver, right?
Right.
So where the promise meets the reality today is going to be simple domain-specific bots that do a few things and do it well. They don't pretend to be humans, though they are human-friendly, and it sort of stays within that context, right? But I think if you try to, just like you said, if you try to be Siri and say, you know, I can explain the meaning of life, I mean, it's just going to fail.
Yeah, there was a funny story in the Turing test that there was an American computer science professor that was fooled by a Russian chatbot on a dating site. So it was kind of Russian brides, and the dude went there for flirting with Russian girls. And for a number of months, he thought that she was talking with a live, beautiful Russian girl, and he figured out that something is wrong when he started inviting her to meet in America or in Corsica, and she was kind of reluctant to go and meet him. So now he thought, oh, maybe it's something is wrong here. And he was computer science professor, not just a random schmuck. And the trick was that she was a Russian bride. So she apologized from the beginning. My English is not perfect. So every time when the software made a mistake, it was attributed to her bad Russian.
So is your travel agent Russian too?
Yes, her name is Marina, yes.
Okay.
So what's the most surprising thing that you guys have learned about conversational interface?
Most surprising thing.
It's really hard to build, and people, users, always surprise you. You think that you know everything they could ask, and they find ingenious ways to ask differently.
Back there.
I had a question about, effectively these are platforms that are built on top of other platforms, so like even Facebook Messenger gets Apple's permission for certain things. Platforms have a tendency to turn on their kind of providers. I mean, look at Twitter's ecosystem getting blown up, or Zynga and Facebook's relationship. Why do you think it's going to be different this time around for providers building on top of these platforms? Or is there anything that, I mean, probably the majority of people here are bot providers as opposed to platform, because there's two platforms here. From app providers point of view, what would you strategically do?
I mean, coming from having so my first company in Seattle was a social CRM, and we aggregated social network data. And we had a press article come out, said we were going to compete with LinkedIn. LinkedIn was basically 80% of our data. I lost that on that day and started over. So coming from that view, I never believe that we're not going to lose anyone. I think we're going to lose all of them. So I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket at all. But they are much bigger these days. Like the fact that we're on SMS and Facebook and Twitter and Slack and whatever, it's like if we lost one, we wouldn't die. So I look at it as like I am going to lose one. I don't know who, and I don't trust any of them. But I want to get prepared for if I lost one, how would I go to him?
Yeah, I think it's also in the context of, you know, you can't do what the platform wants to do. I mean, then you're going to be roadkill, right? But if you're going to have millions of bots like you have millions of apps, I mean, Apple, it's impossible for Apple to compete with a million app developers, and they don't even try, right? Because ultimately the ecosystem benefits. But the 3 or 5 most important apps will do, maps and so on. So I think as a bot developer, I mean, that's the strategy. Not foundational. Yes. Component is probably the wrong word. Yeah.
Oh, well, actually, I have a few of them. Going back to the Slack thing for a second, if we're looking at conversational interfaces, Slack started out with sort of maybe like one conversation with a team, but now we all have several teams, and then we have several channels within those teams, and rediscovery becomes kind of a problem. You don't know where that one conversation, that little tidbit happened. Do you see that ever becoming a problem with, you know, these interfaces, or is this all one person to one bot kind of relationship?
I think it's the best question to ask. Because if it's so easy to make bots, and everyone can make a bot, if we think app discovery is bad, bot discovery is going to be a million times worse. And I have zero idea how it's going to play out, because the platforms aren't thinking about it yet. There's no way to discover any of them on any platform. But the amount of bots, I have to imagine, is like just blowing up. But there's no way to find them, because we're kind of like forcing our own app store on every platform, and it's too easy to make. So I don't know. I have no idea. I think it's the biggest challenge will be, we know we're going to have the discovery problem way worse than apps. So like, how do you curate? Do platforms become curators? I think the biggest problem with Telegram is that they don't curate, and it became the spam show instantly. It's like porn bots every day. Like my top 3 is just like the best porn.
Top 3 in particular.
Hey. Yeah. No, like it is. I love Telegram did an amazing job. Like by far the best job of a bot infrastructure from like so far beyond all the other platforms. And they just said, fuck it, it's open. And instantly it's just completely overrun because it's too easy to build. And so that's a great thing, as we talk about, and the discovery is going to become 100 times worse. And so I think it's the question to be asked that I don't even have a clue, because then is it every platform has different discovery? I don't know.
It's like the arms race is now bot suppression.
Right.
Yeah, right? Is it an aggregator that aggregates all? I don't believe everyone wants an individual bot. Like I can't have 1,000 contacts that are bots for everything. But who knows?
So here's a thought, right? What if, so let's say there are 1,000 bots chatting with you. Could you have a personal assistant bot that then manages and filters 1,000 other bots?
That's the view.
And you delegate authority to this assistant bot, and it knows. And it can handle, by the way, 1,000 other bots. And it knows what I like, what I don't. It knows which one to escalate to me, which ones to just handle or ignore.
Yeah.
According to rumors, that was Google is building. That they want this kind of head bot that will manage other bots.
Right.
Same with Facebook. I mean, Facebook M now doesn't say that, but as they onboard every business,
Right.
and the front end of the business is going to be bots. If you're talking to Facebook M, who knows you like sushi, it's going to then talk to OpenTable, which is a bot. Like,
Oh, absolutely. So you're going to look. In fact, there's a lot of possibilities. You could have, bots, you can chain bots, right? So one bot talking to another, and so on. You could have hierarchy of bots, one bot managing other bots and such, right? And I think it's great because in a way, each developer can build different things, but they can still plug and play. You may have even discovery, right? And I think app discovery was a problem, but web discovery was solved pretty well by Google. So maybe there's a super bot here, and somebody advised me not to call it master bot, but anyway.
Only on Telegram.
So let's say you have a super bot that can help you discover other bots, like you just said, right? And of course, every platform will want to control that one sort of super bot. But I think these are solvable in interesting ways, and it'll lead to new possibilities. So, I think that's
Speaking on this master bot, there is an additional advantage of the bot messenger infrastructure that in the websites you have to pass from one site to another. You don't combine two sites together. So Google, you click on Google, Google sends you to Amazon or to New York Times website. With messengers, you could have group chat. So suppose you come to, well, our Altera and ask about vacation in Mexico, and we give you some answer. And then you say, well, how about diving in Cozumel? And I don't know anything about diving in Cozumel, but there is another service, a travel agency that specializes in diving in Mexico. So what we do, we make a three-way group chat. We are still present there. Our bot sits there, but it says, okay, I have a specialist for diving in Cozumel. You chat with them. Our bot sits and listens. And when it's time to interfere, that probably the user says, okay, I'm done with diving, now I want dining or fishing. So, okay, we have a specialist in fishing, now I bring the fishing specialist into the group chat. So you have this kind of one head concierge, head bot, that would moderate the discussion the way you do.
I might be a bot, you don't know.
I just feel like your question, just a quick, everyone always says this. They say like, well, Google solves search, so, and that's always the answer, right? But everyone going after trying to displace search by doing everything through messaging, like, they're so different. Messaging is transactional, and I feel like I need an answer, I need to do it, and it needs to work every time. That's how I feel about it when I like watch someone use it.
No, but I was just talking about bot discovery. So it doesn't have to do everything. It just knows all the other
Oh,
bots.
what other bot? Got it, done.
Right? So,
It's like
yeah,
this
there was a
Google's
question.
created
That's-
So, yeah, so the question is, do you think the App Store guys are going to dictate what kind of bots may or may not be, should or should not be on messengers?
They cannot, because it's just a person. It pretends to be a human. So App Store cannot control it.
Well,
How App Store knows is our Marina is a bot or a human. It's just a contact in your address book.
But, so,
Messenger can control it, but not Apple.
Well, let me ask you this,
Not
let
the
me
App
explain
Store.
that, right? So Telegram, let's say it has got
Yeah.
Telegram
and
can
obviously, you know, Apple has a very interesting stance on there, right?
yeah.
Can they then, in the future, saying, we've been seeing on Telegram a lot of these things which is, you know, against our rules. It's coming from a third party, then what happens to the Telegram? And then can they, Apple dictate then the Telegram to take that off?
So it's probably related to that other question
Oh,
earlier,
you're saying,
which
can
is,
Apple control Telegram?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and the bots going in Telegram.
I think
Because
what's more likely is not individual bots. Apple will probably shut down or threaten to shut down Telegram if it continued with these bots, and you know, sort of. But in a stack, I mean, of course, the lowest level platform can dictate what the next level up can do, and I'm sure there will be conflicts of this kind.
You're saying, because like, Apple doesn't allow porn apps on the App Store, but they're now coming to Telegram.
Yeah, I mean, like, in a point, it's a little bit more obvious, but you know, if you look at Flux, remember the thing that you put in terms of write down. Now, basically, Apple didn't allow that to happen on the iPhone because they were going to come out with that. So now that becomes a very competitive challenge where they might have internal conflict, and then can they basically, in essence, disable the bot or the messenger itself and saying,
Other one is transactions like currency, like who needs the App Store, you know, who wants to give Apple their 30%, I'll just play my games through Telegram.
Right.
Well, Apple probably could shut down the entire Messenger when it is small, but if it is as big as Telegram or Kik, that's probably too much because 200 million users will be pissed off and probably will switch to Android. So when the Messenger grows big enough that it becomes kind of beyond of Apple's reach.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about some of the things that we hope the platforms don't do. What do we hope the platforms will do? How do we hope that the platforms will evolve? One of the things we said that we hope the APIs will become more uniform. What other things are we hoping for?
I think the general direction that you see sort of happening in China maybe, like where you know the messaging app WeChat is so much richer than what you see in any dominant messaging app in the U.S. Where it's very easy. For example, I go into a cafe in China and I log into the Wi-Fi there. It asks in exchange for the free Wi-Fi for me to follow the merchant, and then two or 3 days later I get a text saying there's a deal going on. I can go get a cheaper cup of coffee or something like that. Something like that that's like very personalized, very localized, and allows you to seamlessly interact with sort of the merchants around you. I think that would be nice to see developing here in the U.S. I'm not sure why it hasn't developed here in the U.S., but it just seems like it's already happened in other places.
Yeah, I think, we've done a lot of thinking around this. I think one of the most important things to me that messaging platforms ought to do is enable beyond, go beyond plain text messaging. And, we call it smart message, others call it cards, or, basically just inline message elements with structured fields and the ability to have handlers associated with those fields, right? It almost becomes a mini web page. Because if you don't have that, then you're stuck in the world of plain text messaging, natural language parsing, and AI. And there's a lot of challenges, and it's going to take a while to get there. But the moment you allow these structured interactions, then the whole web app paradigms where interacting with websites, with you click buttons and it does things, and it's still very powerful, right? 100% of the websites today, even without AI, they work pretty well.
Yeah. It would be great to see like really rich integrations. For example, you're talking to your friend, you send them your location, and then they click on the location and hail an Uber, and the payment happens all within the messaging app. I think that would be great.
But it's more important than that, which is that now the developer has control over the message, right? So if I'm going to connect my refrigerator, right, the developer knows what the button should do, and when you click on it, what action it could have, and the platform cannot possibly know up front or anticipate all the possible use cases. So if it just opens that up and makes it programmable, then suddenly the bots can be a lot simpler, right? They just say, if this button press, do this, if that, then do that.
Is there any motion towards any kind of a standardization for that kind of a markup?
Well, firstly, there should be an appreciation for this thing, but clearly, these are JSON templates in some form, and once you agree, like an invoice is an invoice is an invoice, the moment you agree with that, it just opens up payments, for example, or any sort of, a menu item or an order or a delivery or logistics and so on. So clearly, it's much easier to standardize because they're just templates. There's no, it's not technology necessarily, but it can have such a huge impact. So yeah, between one, enabling that inline in the message stream, and then standardization across platforms, I think that'd go a long way. At least it makes bot making easier, makes the interactions much richer.
The payment part, the specific payments module or part as a desirable feature of the platform is going to be very, very important. Like there's going to be a lot of developers. Like I don't want to work with X payment processor because it has high fees, and the other one retains my money, and the fraud prevention policies of. So I think there's going to be a trade-off between how elegantly the payment solution is shown and how open to freedom of payment processors is deployed within the platform. There's going to be, the payment debate is going to be pretty important. Right?
Yeah. All the UI stuff. Oh no, I was saying all the UI stuff is great. I'm betting we call it MML, you call it smart contract, whatever.
Right.
The biggest one that I'm excited about is it's been a while since we've had a growth channel. A long time actually. And every 5 to 7 years, some new channel opens up that lasts like 9 to 18 months.
Right.
And massive companies are built in that time. Since like 1990. Like every time there's this moment, it blows up, marketers ruin it, and it goes to hell. That's what happens, because it gets too expensive, so it's no longer a growth channel. But what I want is the business services tab that's a toggle on your contacts to what we're doing, because we're all so early in the space, watching out for how to be in those channels of featured directories. It's the App Store of 2008. It's back to those days.
Right.
And there'll be it's the Facebook platform for games early on. It's the MySpace game. It's the AOL early days. It's all those things. This channel could be that, and there's so many players that I'm just trying to watch where is that going to happen on what messenger first, because no one's doing it. But the minute they make a section that's a flip over to the best services on the app that 90% of people spend all their time.
Right.
It's gonna, and it's so much bigger at scale now than it was 7 years ago.
Right.
The minute there's one of those things, one platform, if WhatsApp tomorrow was like best services on WhatsApp, and like you're there for 6 months,
Right.
you win.
Right,
Like
exactly.
that's the game that like I'm watching.
So you're right. I think maybe
Land grab.
today the platforms may appear fragmented
There hasn't been one of
because it was all about messaging and they're all roughly similar as far as basic messaging is concerned. But in this, let's say, messaging 2.0 paradigm, if one is so much better than the others in enabling a developer ecosystem, programmability, richness, sophistication, consumer experience, and so on.
Is anyone tweeting in here? No? I'll share something that's kind of crazy. This is not for public knowledge. Camera. Actually, it doesn't even matter. It's not anything. It's rules, but I don't hide it because it's already done. But the example that I give there is, so we're on Facebook Messenger. We're one of the first bot companies to ever do it. 3 days ago, we lost the ability of what just happened, but for 2 weeks, if you type the letter A to message someone on Facebook, they defaulted businesses first, contacts second. The first company who showed up was Assist. Thousands a day, every day. Just, and we were like, what the fuck? And I was like, it's gonna happen. Like, and they were like, I mean, they're like testing a lot of shit, and like they're awesome and they're good to work with, the Facebook team, but like they already turned it off. But for 13 days, I was like, whoa. And that was like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and they're gonna be this business contacts, services contacts on all these platforms, and they're gonna be gold rushes because everyone's there.
Right.
And they're gonna sit at the top, and it's like it's not far away.
Speaking of this directory of businesses, there was a company acquired by Google called Aardvark with double A. That was question answering service for instant messengers. Do you know why it was called Aardvark?
AA.
Because it started with double A, so in instant messengers they were always on top.
Oh, the best part is if you typed ass, we showed up. Seriously. Not kidding, I told everyone, just type in ass to Messenger, bro. Boom. That's why actually we had a ton of spam hitting us. People, you should look at the logs.
When is a conversational interface better for the user? What kind of thing is the greatest thing that you can do over a conversational interface for the user that they get the most out of?
I think when there's a lot of complexity in sort of navigating like the space, like when you want an answer to something and it's very hard to find, and you sort of want something intelligent on the other end doing all the work and then presenting something very simple, I think that's probably the biggest bang for the buck, and it's why people want services like this.
Actually, I have a different opinion. I think that the biggest advantage is push. That conversational interface, a bot, can deliver information to you without your asking and even knowing to ask about it.
But why is that good for the user?
There are many, you cannot show events, say concerts, or new releases, or sales, deals, that you cannot go to Google and search for, say, Otmar Liebert, that's your favorite musician, and you want to know when he comes to San Francisco. So in the pool Google universe, you have to go to Google and type Otmar Liebert San Francisco. Okay, nothing. Then tomorrow you go and the pool again. That's ridiculous. There must be an agent that knows whom you like and send you an SMS when he comes to San Francisco. And there is a lot of situations like that that are not handled by websites and by pool commerce and push commerce. Some products are bought, some products are sold. So for those that are sold, messengers have huge advantage for both buyers and sellers.
I think if I may say something, right? The reason why a lot of this thing is happening around conversational commerce and messaging and so on is, our screens are getting smaller and smaller. as we're trying to do more and more things, right? There's a whole range of services popping up, and then there's the smart home and the smart car and smart devices wanting to talk to you. But you're doing all of that on a tiny little screen. So wouldn't it be a lot simpler if you could just say, okay, what's the best deal on this LCD TV? The alternative would be you open up a browser, go to Google, search for something, go to 5 other sites, look at reviews, do a bunch of things, right? For the conversation is you just ask the question, presumably you get the answer, right? Or, I just want, Thai food delivered home in the next half an hour. It doesn't matter which service, which restaurant, and so on. So I think that the fact that you don't have to go through a series of steps to take an action, but you could just sort of state it very naturally. So conversation makes things simple. You don't have to think. There's no sort of cognitive overload. You're just asking. It's almost like you're asking a friend.
So it's all about the entry point? It's not necessarily about the follow-on experience, it's about the entry point?
No, I think every step of the way. Certainly the entry point. The follow-on experience to sort of refine it. If it's travel, then you need more refinement. If it's just a simple thing, then then there's no follow-on, if you will. So, but it makes all of that easier. The third thing is push. You don't even know to ask. You don't want to have to remember to ask. Let's say you're waitlisted for something, or when the flight ticket that you're looking for goes below $500, whatever it is.
Well, push doesn't require a conversational interface, right? So you could have it by
No,
itself.
that's not the point. I think that the fact that you have a conversational platform between you and the other service enables the push. If you didn't have it, how do you get notified? How does
Websites cannot talk to you.
Well, but apps can, and websites are now being able to set up push, right? That's
No,
a thing
if
that's
you
developing.
open it, it's kind of, it sucks, doesn't work.
Yeah. I think the other thing fundamentally is just we're getting apped out, right? You have too many apps, millions of apps. It's hard to context switch. It's hard to download, maintain, update. Most of us use no more than a dozen apps a day, and yet there's millions of them. I think it's a lot easier if it's all in one place. The number one app by far is messaging. So if that's the one app you have to use, you might as well do everything else in there without having to switch context. You don't have to download, update, maintain everything. It's all in the cloud. Bots are convenient in the sense when they have something to tell you, they alert you, but otherwise they disappear. They don't bother you. So in that sense, it's easier to manage. And then later on, like we talked about, personal assistant bots and so on, they could even filter these other messages coming in and such. I believe it could make, it could allow us to do more while making life simpler for us because, you could offload a lot of these activities.
Yes. So one of the articles
David.
about this chatbots and conversational interface was entitled like, "Thanks God I don't need another fucking app for that."
At the end of the day, the most basic app is the messaging app, and the most universal interface is basically human language. So I think messaging captures kind of the simplest of both things.
But the reason that conversational is good shouldn't be because apps suck. The data doesn't support a slowing in app installs or anything like that, right? So there must be something about that conversational interface that makes it appealing and a superior delivery method for certain things.
I think I could paraphrase it quite simply as most other computing paradigms force humans to behave like computers, right? Tab 1, button 3. A messaging interface forces computers to behave like humans, saying, talk to me. Don't
That sounds quotable.
There you go.
No, it's Star Trek.
I think
Remember Star Trek? Computer, where is Lieutenant Commandant Data? Or
Okay.
what's the next habitable planet?
So I think, sorry to cut off, I think in the interest of time, I know there are still some questions, but I think most of us are going to be around. There's still some pizzas, drinks, and I think it's been a great conversation, so let me just sort of end it here. I think thanks for a very stimulating conversation. Thanks to all of you for coming here as well.
Thanks to the organizer.
Yes.
Thank you guys. So I want to thank you guys for coming. I want to give these guys a big round of applause. And I want want to mention again that we have another meetup on, I believe it's February 18th on, that's a Thursday. And we still have more pizza, and please sign up in the back if you haven't left us your information. Again, thank you all for coming. You can stick around and chat for a little while, and hope to see you again soon.
Some more conversations, yeah?
Some more conversation. I do. It's in my
More than half of all. So chat seems more and more relevant all the time, so that's what I'm trying to do.